President Trump has announced he won't be attending the inauguration of his successor, Joe Biden, just hours after promising a peaceful transition. He will become the first U.S. president to miss the ceremony in more than 150 years. But Joe Biden said his decision was a good thing, one of the only things they'd ever agreed on. He called President Trump an embarrassment to the country. Our North America editor, John Sopel, reports.
The words horse and stable door come to mind as contractors are brought in to erect some proper security around the Capitol Hill complex. So alarmingly and easily breached by the Trump-supporting mob on Wednesday night. And the repercussions are still being felt. Last night, a chastened and tense president spoke words that had clearly been written for him.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack.
The change of tone and substance in just 24 hours is startling, whiplash-inducing. As they say on school essays, compare and contrast.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high. But now tempers must be cooled and calm restored.
You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. So go home. We love you. You're very special. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation.
But from the reactivated presidential Twitter account today, an unsurprising statement. To all those who've asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January the 20th. Not that Joe Biden is shedding any tears.
That's what I am looking forward to, him leaving office. I was told that on the way up here, way over here, that he indicated he wasn't going to show up at the inauguration. One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
In the wake of the riots and the president's incendiary words, he's faced multiple resignations and the threat of removal from office. That explains the astonishing volte-face from Donald Trump last night. He had no option. And there's this. Just before he spoke, it was confirmed that one of the Capitol policemen, Brian Sicknick, had died from injuries he received while trying to hold the rioters at bay. Today it was ordered that flags should fly at half-mast in his honour, but they're also flying at half-staff for American democracy.
And John, just 12 days left of President Trump's term in office, but a lot can happen in 12 days.
And it's going to be a
very long 12 days, because you can see already that the Democrats are planning to draw up articles of impeachment, to impeach him a second time in the House. Apparently this is being planned when the raid on the Congress was taking place, and they're going to accuse Donald Trump of intention to cause an insurrection. So that's that. There is also Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. She has been in touch with the commander of the US military to say the president should be stripped of the nuclear codes because he is not a reliable person. You've got the White House saying that this is going to sow further division. There are Republicans saying he ought to go. So that is the next 12 days. We don't know what Donald Trump might do or say next. Last night he was on water cue. He might let rip if it's not. And so there's a lot of uncertainty.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday night, and hope all you guys are doing well tonight, and hope you guys are winding down after a long and crazy week of politics and a pandemic and a variety of other things that are happening in this country and in this world. And I hope even in the midst of all of this that you guys are finding ways to find joy and peace in your lives, and and just sort of looking at this stuff but not letting it destroy you. Now, I can tell you guys for a fact that it is very difficult to really concentrate on a lot of work when the country is going through the crazy crises that is going on. And so I just want to talk just for a couple minutes tonight just about what on earth is happening, what we are to do, what's next. And so I'm going to give a little historic perspective. I think it's really important. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the election of 1876, but in the election of 1876, we had Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, who were battling it out. Hayes was a Republican, Tilden was a Democrat, and one electoral vote separated them. One electoral vote, folks. And so what happens is that they ultimately, sort of both campaigns were essentially trying to be seated. Now, at this point, there was a 4-month period between us having inauguration and the election, so the inauguration wasn't until March at this point. But what happens is that the two camps go to Washington, D.C., and they actually stay in this hotel that is actually owned by an African American at the time, which is really crazy if you think about it in the late 1870s. Hey, Marina K. Hey, William. How you doing? Good to see you guys. Marina K. I can't help myself. I've been talking about this every day, all day. I just wrote an article, by the way, you guys. It's on my blog, Till Williams III. It's in my Facebook page. It's some other places. So check it out, LinkedIn, whatever. Yeah, I think, for many of us, it's cathartic to continue to talk and to engage and have discussions. So please, you guys, fill up the comment section. What's going on with you? Tell me what you think, because we got to process. It's like group therapy is really what it is. But anyway, so in the election they go and they ultimately, they make this compromise called the Compromise of 1877. And in the Compromise of 1877, what happens is that Tilden agrees to allow Hayes to take the presidency, and Rutherford B. Hayes then says to Tilden that the Southern Democrats can have their way in the South. They will remove federal troops from protecting African Americans, and ultimately what we see is the beginning, the genesis, if you will, of almost 100 years of Jim Crow terror in the South, because Rutherford B. Hayes single-handedly ended Reconstruction. And so we have been through some very challenging presidential elections before. I remember the 2000 election and all of the trepidation that surrounded the fact that for weeks we didn't know who actually had won the race. But I can definitely say that this probably would probably be in the top at least 5 in history that sort of times of controversy and real times of angst for folks. So, what we saw this week, and I hate to repeat what's been said, but I think it's important for us to really think about this in a larger space. Like, what does this say about America is the real question. And what I would say is that America is really, it represents, as LeBron James said this week, really there's two nations, right? On the one hand, America is a land of opportunity for many people. It's a place in which anybody can make it if you have a dollar to dream. On the other hand, it is a place of real inequality and degradation of large groups of people based on ethnicity and class. And I can tell you that, honestly, that video this week of the folks in the Capitol doing all the things they did, to me, was more racially incendiary than what happened to George Floyd. Let me say this again. The video that we saw this week was, in many ways, more racially problematic, more racist than what we saw with George Floyd, because we really saw, I believe, a miscarriage of justice and a real clear picture to the entire world that some people have impunity, some people are considered threatening, and other people are not. And it was on a massive scale. Where George Floyd was a situation in which there was one person, one situation. Now, we know this was multiplied across the country. And so the reason why the George Floyd piece blew up the way that it did was because lots of people felt like they could not breathe, right? There have been so many cases like Breonna Taylor, and there's obviously Jacob Blake, which just occurred this week, or excuse me, the no charges this week, and all these various cases. But for me, personally, and I'm sure I don't know what you all think about this, but this case, honestly, was more a slap in the face. This case, this week, was more of a statement of racism. This case, this week, was more of a statement of a double standard and a miscarriage of justice and inequality than even the police brutality cases that we have grown so unfortunately accustomed to seeing. To watch people infiltrate the seat of American government, where we have the largest military in the world. We have more nuclear weapons in America than all nations in the world combined. We spend more money on weaponry and military than any country in the world. And you mean to tell me we can't secure our own capital? That's terrifying, folks. And I would suggest, knowing, having studied military capability, that sort of thing, we could have had troops on location within 10 minutes. And yet they went around for hours ransacking the offices, terrifying folks. Now, what's happening is that a number of people are being arrested now. But I can tell you as a person of color, that is only partially comforting, right? I mean, it's wonderful to hear that justice is being served. But it bothers me that it takes, let's put it this way, our law enforcement really has no choice at this point. I'm not suggesting they wouldn't have gone after them anyway. But here we are, the entire world is watching. There's no choice but to go after these people. What would have happened if the whole world was not watching? Would there have been accountability? And would the Republican Party be changing the way it is? And I will tell you all very clearly, and I try my best to be at least somewhat bipartisan. But this is as clear a time of either right and wrong, one side or the other, drawing a line in the sand, than any other time you could imagine in our recent history. It is impossible for me to see the validity of the other side of this argument right now. There are folks who are arguing that it was Antifa and other infiltrators, which is the dumbest argument you could possibly imagine. And I knew this was going to happen. You also saw Deshaun. I see Deshaun is saying his apology was bull. The video of those cops partying at the Red Sea, we got away there with this waltz right in with no hesitation is alarming. It tells us we live in two different countries in the U.S. There's colored folks, and then there's them. Colored people get gassed and shot for being angry about senseless murders while they get set up and cause chaos to get to go home. What I realized, guys, is that this was such a, oh my gosh, such an obvious issue of injustice that I honestly, guys, I can't. It doesn't sit in my spirit. I walk around my house and I'm thinking about this. I'm saying, what country do we live in, right? And so I shouldn't have read the comment because I forgot what I was saying now. But whatever, I was saying something and then I read Deshaun's comment now and I forgot what I was saying. But I guess if you guys remind me, you can in the comments. It's fine. But the point is, guys, that there has to be major accountability. I think I was talking about how these things are now happening, but I feel like they're too little, too late. Number one, the Capitol wasn't left unsecured. We have no idea what was taken from those offices. We have no idea what information has been compromised. We have no idea. They found pipe bombs on the grounds. We have no idea what happened. That's number one. Number two, if you think about it, these folks, many of them, have had a few days to try to figure their way out of this thing. And I just, I could not believe it. I sat there with my children watching. And, you guys know I wear a couple of different hats. So I teach politics, but I also do acting. And I had an audition that afternoon, and I couldn't concentrate. I probably still got the job. I don't know. We'll see for a commercial. But I don't know. I was just very bothered by it. Then I heard the story about Dominion voting systems. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen that story, which I'm really actually excited about. Dominion Voting Systems, the company that has been really the scapegoat, if you will, or I guess enemy number one within the Republican camp around this question of whether the election was stolen. They're trying to suggest that the Dominion Voting Systems, which is a private company, you can look them up online, they basically just do voting hardware and software, and the states still have full control over the count. The hardware is still under the authority of the states. They can hand count and all these other kinds of things. They basically have defamed Dominion Software's Dominion Voting Systems name so badly, suggesting there was a conspiracy with Venezuela, that they were creating votes, that Dominion is suing Trump's lawyer for over $1 billion. Over $1 billion, with a B, folks, over $1 billion. And I hope to goodness that they win, because people should not be able to defame other folks. Free speech, ladies and gentlemen, ain't free. What you must understand is that there always have been limitations to free speech. Threats to public safety, libel and slander, obscenity have never been covered constitutionally under free speech. And so when you look at what is happening, this defamation of character issue, I really, really hope that they go forward and prosecute these folks for this really irresponsible stuff. And so now what happens, guys? What do we do, right? Where do we go from here? How does America come back together? I'm not sure that it happens. And I watch a lot of the Republican, Democrat, I kind of watch all this stuff. And really the movement for the right now is the creation of what's called the Patriot Party, from what I understand. And what they're trying to do is abandon the Republican Party to move towards a more right-wing ideological movement, if you will. And we'll see what happens with Trump with that. I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. I was amazed, guys, and I was upset a few hours ago. I was like, Twitter, Facebook has done it, Instagram has done it, you guys got to do it too, and voila, then they did it, and I was super happy. I actually follow the president on Twitter because I want to know what he says, and I couldn't get to his account today, which I think is a beautiful thing. Praise God. There is justice in the land. What's going to happen, right? What happens to President Trump? But more importantly, what happens to this movement of close to 75 million people that would, whether physically or otherwise, desire to tear the country apart for the sake of this person? And maybe you say it's not all 75 million that voted for him. There's evidence to suggest the majority still believe that he won the election, but even those who are sort of more tamed and not frothing at the mouth, and these rabid dogs, if you will, in the Capitol, these folks are still to blame too. The Congress is still to blame. Lindsey Graham is still to blame. Mitch McConnell is still to blame. I would say the only Republican senator, Ben Sasse, who I actually have heard speak and had much respect for until he sold himself out for President Trump, I think, and this is a funny hero in this story, probably the only U.S. senator that we could look at on the Republican side and say had some morals was Mitt Romney, right? And Mitt Romney was no hero to many people when he was running against Obama, but hey, you never know what life brings. And so I'm very challenged and frustrated. In my article that I just wrote today, I spent most of the evening writing it last night. I argue that, I talk about a lot of stuff, but in the end I talk about how people of color, the Stacey Abrams of the world, right, who delivered Georgia, the African-American Capitol Police who were fighting, and who then African-American folks who were in the Capitol cleaning up behind these rioters, guys. I don't know if you guys saw this, but if you saw the stories, there are literally a staff of black folks who are cleaning up this mess. And then the pastors in Kenosha who sort of quelled the potential uprising that was just even this week, right, with the issue with Jacob Blake. And I would say that people of color and marginalized groups are really saving this country from itself. And I believe that to be very true. They're saving this country from itself. We are all in this together, folks. We really, really are. And so there are areas in which each one of us, each community, is helping to make the country whatever it is. And I think that in this particular moment, I think politically, right? African Americans in South Carolina delivered Joe Biden a win. Stacey Abrams and that group in Georgia delivered Ossoff and Warnock will win, and then consequently Joe Biden will win. And I would say that we have to recognize the political power that exists. And so for that reason, guys, the glass is not just half empty, it's also half full, because even in a country where people are disrespected and dejected, there still is an opportunity for it to be corrected. Come on, somebody. Now, hey. When people are disrespected and dejected, there's an opportunity for it to be corrected. And that opportunity is through the electoral process, which I think is really, really great. I want to read some of you guys' comments so we can go back and forth here on this. So let's see here. Deshaun said the election was not fair. Teresa Clark says, on the East Coast, she says, I felt the most unsafe this week because if D.C. is not on lock. You're right, Teresa. How on earth can we feel safe in smaller communities or whatever, even larger communities, right? Chicago's bigger than D.C., New York's bigger than D.C., when they have not even locked down the U.S. Capitol. That's a very, very good point. William Archie said, if enough are being arrested. Deshaun says, I want to talk about the Confederate flag in a second, too, because I think it's very important. I think that there is some policy change I advocate for in this article. Please read it if you guys get a minute. If it's too long, whatever, just skim through it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But I hope you see the couple of policy solutions that I lay out. Deshaun said, I don't think them being arrested will go very far either. They need to show us some convictions. Very good point. Not enough have been arrested. William, Teresa agreed. Deshaun, exactly. You guys, so the Confederate flag, right? So if you saw some of the pictures, the Confederate flag, just seems to show up at these places. Whenever, there's a group of, as Hillary Clinton will call them, deplorables together, the Confederate flag just makes its way out there. And I would advocate for, and I'm working in an advocacy role. I ran for office, may run for office again, but really advocating for the removal of the Confederate flag in our national culture completely. I know some states have gone through the process locally. I don't think it's enough. I think because it is such a volatile symbol of both treason and racism, and that it tends to be connected in many ways to these movements, these ideologies that we saw just the other day, that there is no place in a civil society for the Confederate flag. I hope that one of the things that Joe Biden does is look at national policies to ban its usage across the nation. I know that people go, oh, free speech, free speech. Germany has done this with Nazism, Nazi flags, Nazi symbols. And it has been part of their healing process from the Holocaust. Because if you allow for these ideologies to live and breathe and to have public sanction, there is validity that you add to them. And as a result, you are really playing with fire. I have not heard Joy Reid's commentary. I would love to hear it. I'll probably check it out. And yes, Teresa says it's a bougie way of wearing a sheet on your head. I would agree very heavily, folks, very, very much so. But I will tell you guys that we should take heart. And we should not fear and we should not be upset during this time, because I think that there are more people in this country who are rejecting this. The Democrats won the House. They won the Senate. They won the White House. Let's see what you do, Joe. Right? Let's see what you do with this, what we have. And I think, it's not for me, once again, an issue of being a Democrat or Republican. It's an issue of being on the side of equality or being on the side of inequality, the side of being for justice or being on the side of injustice. And I think that's where we are right now. And so, guys, there's some good things happening. There are good things happening. The world is watching us. The video I just showed was from the BBC, and they're watching, and they are adamant about the hypocrisy, right, that they see very clearly in America. This is a very good thing. And so, what's going to happen to our lovely president, right? He has no Twitter, he has no Facebook, he has no Instagram. His people are dropping like flies, although I saw someone compare them leaving now to someone taking their seatbelt off after the plane had already landed, right? It's like, okay, hey, I trust you, pilot. I tell you, so what? The plane is down. Like, okay, you can take your seatbelt off now. You haven't done anything, whatever. So I think that what will happen to him, I think that his movement will continue. he threw his folks under the bus. So I don't know, I mean, he really did. You saw on Wednesday, he was whipping them up and, hey, let's go storm the Capitol. Listen to his speech to just kind of hear what he was saying. And then on Thursday, he's like, we're going to prosecute all these people. I didn't tell him to do that. So, but these folks will probably still love him and still go after him. But what will happen to him, right, is the real question. And what will happen to his movement? And I just hope, folks, that there will not be tolerance for this. I mean, it's really that simple. I know you can't control the way people think. And I know you can't kill ideologies, but we do it all the time. At least we try to, right? What do you think we've been doing in the Middle East for the last 20 years? Trying to fight jihadism. We're trying to fight an ideology, right? And I think we have to have that same level of commitment to fighting the ideology of white nationalism, the ideology of predatory capitalism, and what I would call Darwinian capitalism, which is what I think a lot of these folks are arguing for. I mean, essentially, in their minds, the idea that the government would give people health care or give them any kind of social safety net or provide for equality around educational outcomes, those sorts of things are communism to them. They're socialism. And so, to me, the only alternative is Darwinian capitalism, the kind that was advocated by Ayn Rand. If you guys are familiar with Atlas Shrugged and the work of Ayn Rand, who, by the way, influenced Paul Ryan, Rand Paul, and Ron Paul. This is this weird thing. I made this chart in class one time. It's like Ayn Rand, Rand Paul, Paul Ryan, and whoever I just said, Ron Paul. Isn't that scary? It's kind of a weird little thing, whatever. Well, all of them are in the same ideology of libertarianism that says that the government really shouldn't do anything. They come from the school of Barry Goldwater, who ran for president. Actually, Hillary Clinton worked for him at one point when she was a Republican, when she was younger. And he wrote a book called The Conscience of a Conservative, in which he argued the civil rights movement, that he would not support the civil rights movement because the federal government had no authority to tell people across the nation what to do. Well, this kind of ideology is really, unfortunately, guys, where the modern Republican Party is. They are of the mindset that the federal government does not have the ability or the authority or the right to impose any kind of protections across the board. The protections, to me, that are very clear in the preamble when the Constitution talks about domestic tranquility and promoting the general welfare. All those things to me are very clear in the Constitution, but this is the ideology. And so when you look at that ideology, ladies and gentlemen, the ideology, I think, has to be refuted and opposed. Because at the end of the day, what it does is it leaves people literally in the street dying. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is see the response to the pandemic. The response to the pandemic is the quintessential libertarian, right-wing, ideological position around how the government ought to deal with crises. President Trump literally says, the states deal with it, I'm over here. That was literally the plan to deal with this pandemic. And we went 11 months, right? 10 months with one $600 payment. Then we got another one. That's $1,200 total for a period of 10 months in which we've had the worst economy since the Great Depression. Literally, I understand why a lot of these business owners are angry and protesting about not mask mandates, but closing down, because the government has not supported them. I don't think they should be open, and I think they should be wearing masks, but I also think that the government should have covered their butts in a much more comprehensive way so that they could survive this pandemic. Hey, Maxine, what's up? Hey, you're back. Good to see you again. I agree with the Confederate flag is a symbol of treason. The news nor any educational forums focus on that fact. You're right. It's a symbol of division beyond race. It instigates people to thoughts of succession and a lost war of vendetta. Vendettas can be violent. Absolutely. There is no place in the United States for the Confederate flag. I used to have respect for, I told you guys at one point I had been a little bit more right-leaning in some of my positions. And I had respect at one point for Mike Huckabee, oddly enough. When Mike Huckabee was the governor of Arkansas, he won 40% of the African-American vote. because he came out of the faith community, and he had a very strong sort of anti-poverty program while he was governor. When he got on the national scene, that despite his, I won't talk about his daughter because that's a whole other situation. It's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But the thing that got me completely away from him, where I was kind of like, oh, well, maybe this guy, which, by the way, if Republicans were not so overtly racist, they probably could get a lot of people of color who are a little more conservative than you think. But they have really solidified that there's no place for people of color who are, I think, heavily self-respecting around the larger issues. And I'm not suggesting that as an insult to anyone, because I've got friends who are conservative. So let me be careful in saying that. But what I will say is that that has been a real problem. So when he said at one point in his campaign for president in 2008, he says that, I'll never forget the quote. He says, they're telling us what we could do with this Confederate flag in South Carolina, the federal government. I'm going to tell them where they could stick the pole. And that was his reaction to the deep, deep pain that African Americans have felt looking at a symbol of the promotion of slavery, and the deep, deep pain that many other Americans feel around that question, and also the issue of treason and sedition, which, by the way, the definition of sedition is exactly what we've seen this week, right? The inciting, if you will, of opposition to the government. And so we've seen that very heavily. Will Trump get prosecuted for that? I doubt it. I really do. But I will tell you that when it comes to that Confederate flag, I have no tolerance for it whatsoever. And I'm grateful to see it moving out of our culture, but to me it's happening too slowly. We're 150 years. Actually, we're beyond 150 years. We're more like 170 years since the Civil War, and we're still having to fight this battle. It doesn't make any sense. It is a kick in the face. So anyway, that's that, guys. Just wanted to share a few thoughts tonight, and I just hope that all of us are, we need each other. We're a community, right? And no, you're not crazy when you look at this stuff on TV and go, oh my gosh, what on earth is happening? Hopefully we all recognize that, sensible people are looking at these things and trying to find ways that we can do something different, and that we can be involved and be part of the change. And I think there are many ways we can do that. We can give money to various campaigns. I know I give money to the Reverend Warnock's campaign in Georgia. We can get on the phone. We can educate ourselves, educate our friends and family. And we got to vote, guys. We got to be ready. We have another election coming up, national elections. Actually, literally, can you believe it, next year? We have national elections next year. Yeah, we have national congressional races next year. And then depending on your municipality, you'll have other elections. I know in Chicago, we got 2019, 2023. So we're back to the municipal elections there again. So anyway, have a great night, everyone. Many blessings to you. And let's definitely stay connected in whatever ways we can. And this too shall pass, folks. This too shall pass. If you guys are interested, I do a weekly sort of prayer service and worship service on Sundays. If you want, this week we'll be praying, and I'll be talking about what's happening and how do we have a spiritual perspective on all this stuff and how do we wrestle with it. So 12:30 Central Time. Send me a message if you want the link on Zoom. And we got 1619 stuff coming up in February, virtual shows, an MLK panel discussion on the 18th as well, and a couple other things. So let's stay connected, guys. Let's stay inspired. And let's keep on working together to change the world. God bless you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Bye-bye.